So you can get paid for what you're doing. I'm like, really? I've driven over 1,000 vehicles now.
You literally have people telling you what your next step should be.
You don't consider work eventually because it is your passion. Time is of the essence, man. I mean, go and do that thing. You're all granted the same 24 hours each day. It's just a matter of what we do with them.
All right, welcome. We're here with Malcolm Hogan. Malcolm is the owner of Hogan Media Group, and he's also the owner of automotiveaddicts.com. So he is a content and SEO expert, and he also has a passion for cars that he turned into a really interesting project and business. So we're really excited to have you here, Malcolm. For those who aren't familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about what you do professionally and how that led to some of these side ventures?
Sure. Yeah, just a 30,000 foot view. I started my website, Automotive Addicts, back in 2004. And since then, been growing it and turning it into a viable business. But before then, I actually started with a software company, just kind of getting out of corporate America and wanting to start something on my own with being an entrepreneur, and met some folks, networked. I think that's the main thing in a lot of careers is networking and meeting the right people. And that happened for me. And I was able to meet some folks who had a software company selling anti-spyware software. And we ventured into actually helping them out with some internet marketing. At the time, I didn't know much about internet marketing. And I just kind of worked my way as far as teaching myself all that stuff. And, the old school SEO techniques, SEO being search engine optimization, all that stuff, and also taught myself how to design websites as well, which eventually led into creating Automotive Addicts, which I always have a passion for cars. That's kind of like my foundational thing is cars and, wanting to do things with cars and drive cars. And eventually it kind of led into, being something really cool where I get to drive a new car every week or a couple of weeks from the manufacturer, just like the big magazines, Car and Driver, Motor Trend, those folks. So, but it took many years of, working hard and trying to get to that point of actually getting a car from a manufacturer and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the gist of some of the core stuff that I do. I do many other things too, but, we can get into that a little later on.
Yeah, sure. Let's dig into this a little bit because you've got a really interesting story and you kind of gave the overview. You started out with this software company with some friends, and you didn't know a whole lot about digital marketing at the time. How did that turn into kind of like growing your expertise in digital marketing and SEO?
Yeah, I mean, working with a software company, you find out quickly, how they market and, sales figures. You're looking at those, eyeballing them, and you're like wondering, it's like, how does this happen online? And, kind of like out of thin air at the time, and you're like, you kind of worry how it all comes together and clicks. But I think digging in and learning from some experts that were already deep into the SEO world and doing all that stuff, they taught me the ropes, bit by bit, and they kind of left me to myself to figure out a lot of stuff on my own. I guess not necessarily trial and error, but reading a lot of things and seeing how other folks operate it, and of course, a lot of people that are in that field in that space with knowing about the history of the internet and how it worked many years ago. Things are so different now. I mean, it's so social media driven. Facebook, Instagram, you name it, TikTok, all that stuff. But back then, it was just a different landscape altogether. It's like we didn't rely on any of that, for promoting. It's all, content, being an authority on your subject matter, all that stuff. So, I learned how to do all that. I did some blogging back then, content generation and talking about all the spyware threats and stuff back then on computers. But of course, I went to school for computer science, so it kind of worked hand in hand a little bit. But still, like I said, my passion was somewhat computer stuff, IT, but it always went back to cars. So cars are ultimately my passion, and that's kind of rooted out and started Automotive Addicts. So
yeah, and that's a really cool progression that you went through. You started out going to school for computers, getting into the software thing. This leads you to digital marketing and SEO. And then all of a sudden, like this
Mm.
passion that you have for cars, you're like, hey, I've got this new skill. Maybe I could apply it to my passion and actually make something out of it. And that's like a really that's like a really common way that people get from point A to point B. You know, everybody seems to think that these types of things just happen overnight, or you
Right.
know, it's easy. I mean, everybody kind of makes it look easy, or it sounds easy at least.
Yeah.
But what the reality is that it's a progression of steps. And the fact that you went through all those steps, and then there was like this moment, right, where maybe it was a moment, or maybe it was a process where you started to realize that, hey, I can apply these skills to my passion. And do you recall kind of going through that, and what led to that decision to go ahead and try something related to
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. It's funny you say that. I mean, just not necessarily a funny story, but in designing my automotive site, well, let me back up. In starting the automotive thing, one of my buddies, since I was already doing like car meetups and stuff, local. I don't want to say cars and coffee because actually before cars and coffee, but those days I did like little meets for I had a Toyota Celica way back then, and then eventually got a BMW, and we'd have like these car meets, so I'd invite all the people with those cars in our area, and we all get together. And one of my good friends
Oh, wow.
told me, "Why don't you start an enthusiast site? Because I see a couple of these popping up, and like." It's like, okay, that sounds interesting, and I was like, well, I am, learning about, the whole internet marketing world, how to do websites and all that stuff. So, you know what, I'll give it a try. And, I created the site, and after running it for a few years, it was kind of daunting, I guess you could say, because I'm like, I'm not getting anything out of this as a hobby, and then one of my buddies came on and said, so, you can get paid for what you're doing. I'm like, really? So he was like, yeah, it's like there's this thing called Google Ads, just put some Google Ads on there. I was like, really? I was like, you're talking about the search engine Google? I was like, he's like, yeah, the same company. I'm like, so okay. So I researched that and found out it's like, yeah, I mean, I put advertisements on my site and started generating a little bit of revenue. Nothing nothing to jump up and down about. But at the time, I mean, Google was still kind of in their infancy of doing those programs for spreading the advertisements on websites and stuff like that. So, I was one of those people that, was able to grow that naturally, and later on it became a viable thing. I was like, wow, this is actually a viable business. I can actually hire some people and help me out. And, that's eventually what I did. It's funny, these situations, you kind of fall into them instead of thinking about, how do I make money? How do I make money? And a lot of people, they kind of fall into these things. You look at some of the big YouTubers out there. I mean, in the car world, like Doug DeMuro, for instance, in his quest of falling into the YouTube thing, and he didn't do it for money at first. It was just, just a thing he felt passionate about. So, same thing with me. Just, felt passionate about that and was able to eventually get into press pull for vehicles, which that actually took years. Um, the car manufacturers don't want to lend out cars to just anybody, obviously, of course. But I mean, the catch 22 there was like, hey, let me see your old reviews. I'm like, I don't have any reviews. It's like, well, we kind of have to you need some reviews first so we can check out your work, make sure you're legitimate and all this stuff, got the web traffic, this and that. But I was like, I don't want to go to dealerships and borrow cars. So I started, finding creative ways of writing about vehicles and stuff, and actually driving some of my buddies' cars and stuff like that. So, actually it worked out eventually, and one company just took a chance on me. It was actually I believe it was Nissan and Infinity at the time. They reached out to me and said, "Okay, we'll send you a car, see how you do." So worked out, and that's history. So I've driven over 1,000 vehicles now, and
Wow.
it's been a fun thing. And right now with Automotive Addicts, I still want to grow it, and I have some opportunities to do that. Maybe partner up with some other folks, and might be some new neat stuff to check out here soon.
Yeah, really cool. So you had this other thread going then, where you were getting together with some friends, doing kind of like these mini car shows, I guess, and having some coffee, and that kind of grew,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. That eventually turned into me starting cars and coffee here in Jacksonville, Florida. And I mean, I don't want to boast about it, but actually, my Cars and Coffee was one of the first in the nation. After the folks in Irvine, California, that started their Cars and Coffee venue, which ran, a few years before mine. But I consulted with them before starting my Cars and Coffee, and they gave me all the tips and stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, you can use
Nice.
the name and this and that, and so I started Cars and Coffee here in Jacksonville, and people eventually caught on to it. A lot of folks didn't know what it was, and
Mhm.
it was the beginnings of that. And from here, that was what, 19 years ago. I think I started Cars and Coffee.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, ever since then it's been a pretty amazing thing. It's still going on to this day. It's called Caffeine and Octane now here in
Wow.
Jacksonville.
That's
So
great.
yeah.
So during this time of Cars and Coffee, and as that group is growing, you literally have people telling you what your next step should be, right? Like, they were literally saying you need to make a website,
Yeah.
where all this information can come together.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that there's no clearer indication, right? I guess, of what the market wants than when people are literally telling you that you need to do something.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
and that's a testament to just being totally immersed in something, where you're you're doing it, you're living it each day, you're dedicating time and energy to something, and then inevitably these opportunities just start to appear. They start to reveal themselves to you, either through other people or through things that you see. And really, that's the best way for it to happen, I think, right? When
Oh
people are
yeah.
literally asking you to do this thing because they want it themselves.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it wasn't just one friend. A couple of them said some of the same things. They didn't say directly, say, "Hey, start a website," but say, "Hey,
Yeah.
we need some enthusiast things." It's like, well, enthusiast stuff is only small group of people, but
Mhm.
it branches out from there. And instead of my site being an enthusiast site these days, is more consumer. A lot of people
Yeah.
go there for the car reviews. That's like the core of the site.
Yeah.
Just to me having so much experience in driving the cars, and hopefully I know a little bit about cars, I guess. But yeah, that helps. And like I said, it's always been a passion. I mean, whatever your passion is in life, you're gonna naturally know about that subject matter, and being able
Yeah.
to explore it, and educate other people on it, and eventually maybe do something that's work related that you don't consider work eventually, because it is your passion. So
Yeah. Your passion definitely comes through in some of these videos too. I've watched them and I see your reviews on your website, and you could just tell that you're very detail oriented. You really care about all the little aspects of the car that, that maybe other people might not notice, but you take note. And, there's all these pictures and galleries of the cars that you review. And maybe that kind of goes along with how you were also kind of listening and receptive to all the people around you that were telling you what they wanted. You have to kind of be observant, I guess, is the point. And maybe
oh
that's a common thread there for you, that you're a very observant person, and kind of receptive to the things that are in front of you. And you took that um, to help you, or to prompt you to create Automotive Addicts, and now you're using it in the way you do your content as well. How do you feel like your background in content creation and SEO, digital marketing, and all that helped you to make this project, website business, successful over time?
yeah, it was very direct, Anthony. It's funny you mentioned it. I mean, the guys at the software company actually looked at my automotive site, and he's like, "Oh, you need to do this, and you need to fix this, or the colors." And I mean, it was simple stuff, like they already knew about this because they already been in that field of selling things online. In their case, of course, software. But it worked hand in hand. I mean, I learned a lot of that. I'd say majority of it from working with the software company for those years, and I took that from what I learned and directly applied it to the automotive site, and it worked wonders. I mean, at that time, I mean, there was not many YouTube automotive guys out there, so it was all about content. Those days, picking up the magazine, reading those, and of course, those have kind of gone to the wayside, unfortunately. But on the website, people still do read. And funny enough to say that, I mean, it's not all, the video and media consumption of TikTok and YouTube, but I understand. I mean, I totally get it, and at the fault of a lot of that a lot of that stuff, my attention span has shortened too. So when I do read articles, I kind of skim them first and see if it's really interesting. And then if it is interesting enough, I'll read it, So I'm probably not alone in saying that either. So
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it worked, hand in hand with the software stuff, and I'm very thankful for being able to experience that, so I could, be a one of those, and that stuck around for quite some time with running my site. And I mean, Automotive Addicts has been around, since 2004, and it's always been a progressively growing site. Nothing as big as Car and Driver or Motor Trend or any of those folks, or even Autoblog. But unfortunately, even like sites like Autoblog have kind of gone away in a sense of they got rid of all their people and started some other business model or whatever that may be. But I'm still there, so like I said, hopefully I can do some more things with it here in the next couple of months or so and make an impact, and continue to make an impact.
Yeah. Yeah. And now you are getting cars sent to you by major car companies, and they're not just sending you any old car, right? They're sending you like these really cool kind of rare models, high-end models. Talk a little bit about that. Tell me about what that's like.
I mean, I get to touch most cars you see on the road. I mean, unfortunately I don't get any like Bugattis or Ferraris sent to me, but there's certain occasions I get to go to a show or something and actually drive those cars. The manufacturers say, "Hey, come drive our new Rolls Royce or Bugatti," for instance. But yeah, I mean, those experiences are amazing. I don't publicize a lot of that stuff. It's kind of like self consumption for me, just in being in that industry. And unless the manufacturer wants to promote it or something like that, then of course I'll post it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I get to experience some pretty amazing vehicles. I mean, some of the highlights this year probably been maybe the Cadillac CT5V Blackwing. That was a very fun vehicle. They're supposed to send me a new BMW M5 here soon. But yeah, I mean, the new Escalade is pretty amazing. I mean, these are cars you see every day, of course, but the newer versions, I get to see what's progressed over the, past, couple of decades of, innovation and technology in vehicles. So
yeah, wow.
like I said, it's just part of my passion and enjoying it, because originally I wanted to be a car designer, but and that didn't pan out the way I wanted it to. But I took a different alternative that's probably just as good. So
yeah,
I'm thankful for that.
I mean, when you were back in the days of the software company and just starting to learn digital marketing and SEO and content, I mean, did you ever think in your wildest dreams that, several years down the road, you'd be having major car companies sending you vehicles and you'd be testing like every car out there and writing about them and having your own business around that?
Yeah, I never thought, man. I never thought in my wildest dreams. I mean, it's pretty amazing. People come to me all the time. It's like they ask me, "Are you hiring? Are you hiring?" I want to do what you're doing, And when they find out what it is, you're like, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting." I mean, who knows anybody else that gets to drive a different brand new car every week or or two? So, but yeah, it's been a journey, man. I keep on doing it, even though I'll hopefully eventually build up my automotive collection myself for my personal vehicles. I'll still continue to get the press vehicles to, like I said, explore and see what's out there, see what's new, and get to experience all the different technology. Because otherwise, a lot of these cars I wouldn't buy myself. I mean, maybe, well, I'll probably get that Cadillac one day. but yeah, I mean, some of the stuff you get to experience, you're like, wow, this, really interesting. But it's not for me, but I get who it's for, So, but yeah, it's been fun. And from that, I've been able to leverage my media company. I have Hogan Media Group. I also run. I'm trying to expand that here recently. But yeah, it works hand in hand with what stuff I've learned from the software company, doing the same stuff. So we're able to do advertisements, web development, content creation, and social media for companies. So that's a fun thing too. Hopefully I can build up my staff on that and get more clients. So we'll see how that goes as well. So
very cool. And so yeah, you've got all this additional practice on top of working with clients. You've got all this practice on your own. You've got all this experience from running this site. And what would you say your process was like when you were starting out with the site, and how has that kind of evolved over time? I guess you started out just kind of on your own, and now I know you have other people writing articles and things. How has that changed over time?
Yeah, it's changed immensely. I mean, you think about the tools that are out there, technology wise. I mean, there's so many resources now. I mean, I don't even think people learn like the hardcore coding, like I did, back, in programming or doing a website. I started, just doing the HTML stuff, the PHP. Now I'm like, am I forgetting some of that stuff? Because there's always, Chat GPT or some AI platform to help you out. And at the fault of myself, I've used a lot of those, resources to help out and innovate and do other things, with websites I've done and stuff like that. So yeah, that's been a major plus, because I tell anybody now, I mean, don't reinvent the wheel, just improve upon it, polish it or whatever you need to do, because there's so many resources and tools out there, and people who know how to do, some of the hardcore old school stuff. But there's no sense in relearning that. I mean, I don't want to tell people not to learn it. It's good to actually know those foundational skills. But there's so many resources and tools out there to help people along, in whatever they want to do. So it's different kind of world now.
Yeah, for sure. Did you encounter any kinds of obstacles as you were getting started with Automotive Addicts, or over time as you went along? Like, what were some of the roadblocks that you hit along the way, and how did you kind of get through them?
Yeah, I'd say there's a stint of me running the site all by myself, before I was able to hire a few folks. And that was pretty tough, I guess, in managing the whole thing and doing the content, because back then that was before AI. We do use a little AI now for some like news content here and there. But yeah, at that time it was very hard in doing that and having my other businesses running. And that was a struggle. And also, I'd say during COVID, I tried to reinvent myself. I dove into some YouTubing, and I thought I could grow that, but that's kind of a long road. I don't want to discourage anybody from doing YouTube. I mean, if you have a passion for it, please do it. Don't waste any time. Jump into it. Do the best you can. But for me, because I was doing so much other stuff, I just didn't have the time to devote to it like I should have. And I had a little bit of fun. And actually, funny story, Anthony. During COVID and doing the YouTube, I started reviewing like some of my own cars. And I had our old family Infiniti. We had a SUV FX50, kind of a rare car with the V8 and all that stuff. People who know cars, but I posted a video on it. And I hadn't intended on selling it, but because I had mentioned in the video, it's like, oh yeah, I've had this car. It's got a few cobwebs. It's been sitting in the garage or whatever. And people are like commenting. It's like, that's weird. You don't drive this car. It's such a nice car. And it's like, hey, what do you want to sell it? I was like, I don't know. And these people just started contacting me over and over and over. It's like, hey, you want to buy? Want to sell it? Want to sell it? And finally, this one guy was very, very aggressive, and he actually flew down from, I think, Utah. And he had a check in hand. He wanted to buy it. I was like, can you sell it to me? I was like, I guess so. So yeah, like I said, I hadn't planned on selling it, but it was just one of those things. Somebody, everybody wanted to buy that car. So
I feel like there's a lesson in there about,
yeah,
putting yourself out there, creating content, whatever, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
There's probably a few lessons in there about unintentionally. Yeah. What else have you kind of learned about turning that passion that you have into a platform?
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, it's I mean, I'd say don't do it for the money, just do it because it is your passion. And eventually you'll feel like you never worked a day in your life, with just getting up in the morning and being excited about what you do. And that excitement and that passion, I guess, will spread to others if it's the right type of, business that you're sharing, media, whatever it may be. But I mean, even in some of the trades, I mean, have some passion about what you do if that's your thing, And if not, maybe you can eventually start your thing or your passion. I mean, time is of the essence. We only got one shot at this thing called life, and and I mean, life is just so short.
Yeah.
We're only here for a glimpse, and a lot of people just don't realize that. And I mean, if you have an opportunity, take that opportunity. even if it means, like I said, the money aspect. Yes, you still got to live, you got to pay your bills and all that stuff. But I think that stuff eventually comes, with your passion.
So where can people follow you and your work that you're doing?
Yeah, so of course my website, automotiveaddicts.com. Addicts is spelled ADDICTS. But it's funny, I got that name from Mac Addicts was a magazine I used to, because I'm a computer nerd or whatever. Yeah, I found out the Mac Addicts magazine went away, so I was like, you know what? How about Automotive Addicts? That got a nice ring to it, just like that. So started that. But they can also find me at HoganMediaGroup.com, and of course Automotive Addicts on Instagram, Facebook, those platforms.
Nice. You got anything exciting coming up for Automotive Addicts or Hogan Media Group?
Not necessarily, not immediately, but like I said, Automotive Addicts is gonna probably go through some changing stages here coming in a couple of months. Hopefully I can partner with some folks here and do some neat things. Not necessarily YouTube, but we might explore a little YouTube stuff. But we have little new refresh business plan for it. So, and Hogan Media Group, like I said, I'm trying to expand that, get some more clients for internet marketing. So, but yeah,
nice.
Other than that, same old, and just doing the family thing. So other than that, that's what's going on.
Yeah, very cool. Well, it's been great speaking with you here, Malcolm. You have any one last final bits of encouragement for anybody that's out there, maybe stuck in a 9-to-5, or maybe just starting out, trying to do something extraordinary?
Yeah, like I said, time is of the essence, man. I mean, go and do that thing. If you've been mulling over something, go and do it. Do it with some passion. Don't waste any time, and you can always leverage your time as far as if you work a 9-to-5. Maybe fit in an hour or two somewhere where you can actually work on that passion project, and carve out that little bit of time. Everybody, we're all granted the same 24 hours each day. It's just a matter of what we do with them. So, but
yeah,
love
that.
Don't make an excuse to just go do it.
Well, thanks so much. It's been great speaking with you. Hope we can do it again sometime soon, and I look forward to seeing everything that evolves with Automotive Addicts and Hogan Media Group. So we'll see you around, and stay in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Anthony.
All right, man. Hey, if you liked this video, click on the next video right here beside me to hear another great story of someone who moved away from the corporate world and took a progression of next logical steps to end up somewhere extraordinary. I'll see you over there.